Greetings, everyone. This is Jed Shlackman. I'm a holistic counselor and energy healer. For this video, I want to speak about our identity, how we see ourselves, and share an exercise to help build greater self-awareness. Our identity is something that we often think of as stable, that we have a certain self that we present to the world. However, if we honestly look at our life, we can see that our identity, how we see ourselves, our life, what's important to us, all of those things are shifting at least somewhat over time. So who you see yourself as, that's kind of your current self. And we often think of our current self as a continuous self that existed in the past, but really the past versions of ourself are not the same identity. It's kind of as though it's another person. Your past self has some similarities to you, but they're not exactly the same as the present version of you. Even with that understanding, people are often judging themselves and criticizing themselves for things that happened in the past, for their past identity, even though that's not really who you are now. You're a different person. So this exercise I want to guide you through is what I'll call the priorities and identity timeline. And it's simply about looking at a timeline of your life and plotting or marking out who you were at different times in terms of how you define or describe yourself and what was important to you at different times, what were your priorities, what were you focused on at a particular time in your life. And this is naturally evolving over time from the time you're born all the way up through the present, and it will continue to shift and evolve since none of us are really stuck as who we are in this present moment. We're continuing to have more experiences in life and going through different phases, encountering different environments and different circumstances. So all of that is pushing us to grow and evolve. So we can start out looking at this timeline that we're creating. So at the beginning, the line is our age, our progression through time. So we're starting out here at birth, and above the timeline where it says priorities, you could start to write down things that were really important for you. What were you focused on at that time in your life? And of course, as an infant, as a baby, we would think that your concerns would be somewhat focused on security, on receiving nurturing, receiving physical nourishment, of course, which is critical for the child to thrive and survive. The baby needs some form of touch or connection, so it needs those types of feedback and stimulation. So it needs to be soothed and nurtured. And the behavior of that baby is focused on those things. So those are the priorities of that infant after it's born. Basic nurturing and survival concerns. Of course, as we go through time, things will shift and change. Now we can also write down the identity. So of course the identity of an infant is being an infant, being a child that's dependent on its mother or caretaker. So that's the identity being described, which of course is also changing over time. So we could move forward to the toddler years, to the early school years. So over time that child is developing its interests, the things that it desires and enjoys. So the priorities might start to be focused more on particular activities, on play, on social interaction. So we'll see those priorities shift, and then of course in the school age period, a priority might be to succeed or show competence in the academic environment or in sports or arts. And of course different children may develop different talents and different interests, different things that are appealing to them. So some children see certain activities as priorities. Some will maintain a priority of their relationships with their immediate family members. Others might start to shift a little more toward their peer relationships as priorities. So things are continuing to flow and shift over time, and our identity is shifting over time, so the way you label or describe yourself is going to transform. You'll be coming up to your teenage years, to your early adult years, and our priorities are continuing to shift and change. People may be then concerned about going to college or starting a career, going to trade school, forming bonds and relationships. Some people are very focused on being responsible, on managing their affairs as an adult. Others might be more concerned with leisure time, having fun, experimenting with drugs, all these things that people might focus on at a particular phase or age in their life. And as we continue to grow and evolve, we'll leave behind some of our old priorities. They may no longer interest us or appeal to us, and the way we see or describe ourselves could continue to change. We could take on different roles. So if you're a parent and you have children, then a particular priority for you may be being a good role model for your children, doing everything you can to instill values in them, and addressing their needs, spending time with them. For other people, the priorities might be going further in their career, so reaching some level of notoriety or fame. So these are all different things that could be priorities for different individuals. And at some point in your path, you might find that you've kind of done all you can toward a certain priority, and you're looking for something new or something different to begin your focus on. People often change careers in the middle of their lifespan. People's children are becoming adults and moving out and going off on their own, and now the parent may look toward other things to devote themselves to, so their priorities would naturally shift at that point. So this is a useful tool, I believe, to build our self-awareness and remind ourselves that we are evolving, that we're not the same person we were a few years ago or a decade or two ago, and that's a natural part of our growth, of who we are as spiritual beings having this human experience. It also helps us have understanding for other people. We can see that other people are going through the same process of ongoing transformation, shifting their priorities over time. And so we can realize that who a person was in their past is not the exact same person they are here today. And we don't want to continue to define or judge people based on what we saw or observed of them in the past. We want to be open to allow people to change and grow and transform, so we don't, through our judgments or our perceptions, try to limit them. We can support their growth by having this better understanding of the progression of our identity. Once you've completed this exercise, once you've gone through this timeline and marked out different times in your life, different identities or ways you've identified yourself, different priorities you've had or things you saw as valuable or important at particular times, you can embrace all of these versions of yourself. So you can give thanks to your prior or past selves for the role they played in this evolution of you becoming who you are now. Everything that happened along this timeline was part of this development. So that time you spent as an infant, as a toddler, as a child in school, each phase was preparing for the next phase. It's like one thing needs to be experienced in order to foster the growth that leads to the next phase. If you hadn't gone through those earlier phases, you wouldn't have been guided or inspired to become who you are at the next stage. So you can honor all of these different versions of yourself, these aspects of your life path, embracing them for their value, for their importance, not rejecting or resisting any of them, even if there are things you look back upon and say, wow, how did I look at myself or life that way? How did I consider that important or valuable? Well, that was a necessary phase leading toward who you are becoming, so it's okay. There's no need or value for you at this point to reject or critique or judge those versions of yourself. You learned from that period of your life, and what's important is to love and appreciate who you are now while you continue to seek to grow and evolve to become a greater or grander version of yourself, you could say. I hope that this presentation has given each of you some things to ponder, some resources you can use for your own personal growth. For those that are interested in holistic health and psychology and spirituality, you are welcome to visit my website, which is phinsights.com. That's phinsights.com. And now I wish each of you a wonderful day. Namaste.